No, 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 Dianna Russini. You don't get to light a match in a gasoline-soaked room and then act all surprised when everything just burns down around you. That's the reality of what you have done. Not just to yourself, but to an entire profession that already fights uphill battles for credibility every single day. Journalism is built on distance, discipline, and the understanding that access is not ownership. You don't blur lines, you don't cross them, and you sure as hell don't dance on top of them and then pretend you're the victim when people notice. The moment that boundary gets blurred, publicly, visibly, unmistakably, you don't just damage your own reputation, you drag the profession into the mud with you. And that is absolutely exactly what has happened here. You knew exactly what you were doing, toddling and cavorting about with New England Patriots head coach Mike Vrabel. You made the decision to be there. You and he both decided it's okay to take an excremental dump on his wife and kids by carrying on whatever the hell that was. You're either cunning, manipulating, or stupid. Take your pick, and it's probably a good combination of every single one of them. Let's start with the statement you made days after being outed. The polished, PR-scrubbed exit line about moving forward, new opportunities, and the usual hollow language about growth and reflection as you pronounced you would be stepping down from the Athletic, when in reality you were told to pack your travel bag and don't let that door hit you in the ass on the way out. Spare me, please. Spare me and spare everyone your victimization. It reads like every other carefully crafted non-apology we've seen 1,000 times before. Long on self-preservation, short on accountability. Not 1 ounce of real ownership. Not one clear admission of what anyone with eyes can see. This was reckless. This was unprofessional. And this was a complete abandonment of journalistic standards. It's a kind of polished non-apology that says everything except the one thing that matters. I exercise terrible judgment, and I own it. That line's missing. Not softened, not implied. It's missing. Because you're a rank coward that despite being an adult, you haven't learned a damn thing about taking responsibility. That matters because accountability isn't optional in this business. You don't get to wrap yourself in vague corporate language and expect people to ignore what they've already seen. And what they've seen is a journalist crossing a line that every serious reporter knows is there for a reason. You don't get to pretend that doesn't matter. You don't get to act like this exists in a vacuum. It doesn't. It reinforces every lazy, toxic stereotype that those same women have battled their entire careers. It hands ammunition to the worst people in the room, the ones who never believed in their legitimacy to begin with. Those knuckleheads and Neanderthals who will reopen all the wounds by gleefully noting the only reason women succeed in journalism, broadcast, print, news, sports, or otherwise, is because they used what they got to get ahead. You haven't just poured gas on the fire. You brought along the flamethrowers and extra kindling just for good measure. That's not unfair criticism. That's consequence. Progress has been made because professionals showed up every day and proved that narrative wrong. And then something like this happens, and suddenly all that progress takes a hit. It's not because critics are right. It's because moments like this hand them ammunition. It reopens a conversation that should have been buried years ago. It forces talented, ethical journalists to once again answer for behavior that isn't theirs. That's the collateral damage. It's real and will reverberate through every facet of reporting, from the C-level chairs to the young kids starting their journey already at a disadvantage because you couldn't keep your hands to yourself with a married man. Let's be clear. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't a momentary lapse where someone didn't know better. You don't reach that level in national sports media without understanding exactly where the line is. You knew the rules. You knew the perception risks. You know how quickly credibility can evaporate. So when that line gets crossed, it's not confusion, it's choice. Dianna Russini made a choice, and once that choice was made, everything that came before it, now under a microscope. That's how it works. That's how it has always worked. Fair or not, the credibility you spend years building can be shattered in a moment. And when that happens, people don't just question this incident. They question the pattern. They question the access. They question the integrity of every interview, every report, every source close to the situation. That's the cost. And here's the part people don't want us to say out loud. Trust in journalism is already hanging by a thread. Fans don't trust insiders. Viewers don't trust networks. Readers don't trust what they're being told. So when something like this hits the surface, it doesn't just damage one name. It validates the cynicism of millions. That's why this isn't something you just move on from. You don't get a reset button in this profession when you knowingly compromise its core principles. You don't get to rehabilitate your image within a few months off and a carefully managed comeback tour. Journalism is not a redemption arc business. It's a credibility business. And once that credibility's gone, truly gone, it doesn't come back. You took an excremental drop on my profession, the one I and thousands of others have dedicated our lives to doing, honestly, with integrity, pride, and neither I or anyone else in this business will ever let you forget about it. Harsh? Good. It should be. That's what happens when trust is broken, and right now journalism cannot afford that kind of damage. Public confidence is already thin. Audiences are skeptical. They question motives, sources, and narratives. So when a high-profile reporter hands them a reason to doubt, it doesn't say contained. It says spread it. That's why this moment matters. Not because one career is in question, but because the profession itself is already under strain. Every lapse, every shortcut, every blurred boundary makes it harder for the journalists doing it the right way to be believed. If there's any path forward here for anybody, it starts with brutal honesty about what went wrong and why it cannot happen again. Not PR language, not deflection, real accountability. Because journalism isn't a game of second impressions. It's a profession built on first and foremost trust. And once that trust is fractured, no amount of spin can put it back together the way it was. That's the reality. And pretending otherwise only makes it worse.